No, I'm unique. Hello and welcome to my little corner of the internet. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I have a long weekend off work and I'm done editing one video and I'm currently writing another. I want to pump out something relatively fast and fun in between. So let's do it. Joel Haver is an incredibly talented and fun YouTuber who makes short videos and sketches a la Gus Johnson. I believe the YouTube community is proud to have him here, and so am I. But look, you clicked on the video, you know who Joel Haver is. What you may or may not know if you just come across him casually is that he has a bunch of feature-length films he's produced on his own channel, some of which extend to nearly 2 hours. My plan over the course of this video is to watch each of them, give you my expectations going in, and once I've finished, give you my thoughts afterwards. And a few of my friends might drop in to give notes of their own. This isn't going to be my typical deep dive where I review his work and who Joel is as a person or what his history is, because he's still going, you know. When his story is over, hopefully I'm not the one around to tell it. Plus, I think he just released a new feature-length film like a month or two ago as of June 2021, so this video is going to be obsolete in like a year's time anyway. Also, just as a disclaimer I guess, I'm not a film student or someone who studies film as a hobby. I'm not the Kino Corner or Your Movie Sucks, right? My angle is a casual film enthusiast. I can't break down what exact mistakes or triumphs he makes in a technical way. I'm just going off the cuff, only speaking on what I enjoy or don't enjoy aesthetically, and what I believe is fun or exciting. And that's what this is supposed to be, right? A fun, if not exhaustive, look at Joel Haver's feature-length films.
It was at this point I called my family. I'd be missing dinner tonight.
Okay, so the very first film released on Joel Haver's channel was We Are Sasquatch. The information he provides in the description and pinned comment is that the film was it was his very first feature film, and it was filmed in the summer of 2016 with only his friends and family in his hometown. He says the film was also only made with $200 that he spent on a VHS camera that he got off Craigslist, and that he hopes it inspires other people to make feature films as well. I have attempted to do this sort of a project where I watch all of his films before, just in my personal free time, because I thought it would be fun. And this is the one I started with because I like doing things in chronological order. I think it makes sense and it gives you context as to how that person grows as a filmmaker. So I just wanted to do it. So I have to say, as his first feature-length film coming in at an hour and a half long, I'm not super stoked to watch this one again. I know that might seem a little negative, and I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just it's an hour and a half made by someone who at the time didn't have very much feature film experience, and I remember it pretty vividly because it goes on for a very long time. So I don't know, we'll watch it together. Not together, you're gonna see a time lapse or whatever, but I'll watch it. I'll let you know how that goes. I'm not super stoked, but it's gonna get the ball rolling. And oh, I am not ready for this at all. It's gonna get the ball rolling, and that'll be nice. That'll be fun to finally get this project underway. So let's go. Okay, so I'll be honest. I really wanted to say that this movie was incoherent and not good, as that's what I remember on first viewing. But after watching the movie again for this review, I can honestly say that's not completely true. The movie is in a documentary style and epic Snyder resolution. It takes place in 1997 rural Massachusetts, and Sasquatches have been confirmed to be real. Turns out that they are just really hairy people living in the woods. But since being discovered, they have integrated into human society, albeit they are forced to shave and are heavily discriminated against. Now, there are several plots in this movie, like 2 A plots and 3 or 4 B plots happening on the side, and they all do a pretty good job of coming together and moving the story forward despite all of the B plots taking place at the same time as the 2 A plots that happen one after the other. For the first main story, there is a dance competition that is held at the town hall, and we follow Clayton, our main character, and his 2 best friends Ian and Chet as they prepare to compete, with their manager being Clayton's dad, who has shoehorned himself into that role so he can get them to dance to a song from his favorite album, which of course is Squatch. Their main competition is a group of friends, Dominic, Tyler, and Shane, with Dominic's little brother Jeremy being the manager. After practicing, Clayton does an interview about how confident he is about his team's chances, and the journalist then runs the story, taking his words completely out of context, making him seem like he's super confident. This continues, as well as some other backdoor dealings, to his chagrin. This rattles Clayton and is in fact so nervous that he doesn't even show up to the competition. While his team is floundering on stage without him, the Spaghetti Man, you're gonna have to watch it if you want an explanation to that, runs into the room and announces that there was just a Sasquatch Jesus sighting, derailing this arc and starting another. During all of that, we are introduced to the B-plots, so let's get into those in no particular order. The first follows Chet, Shane, and Sophia, Dominic's sister. Sophia has a crush on Chet and Shane is jealous, so he starts beating him up. After realizing that his friends have never been beaten up before, Chet believes that because he's getting beaten up so much that there isn't enough anger left in the world for his friends to get beaten up with. So if he keeps getting bullied, then nothing bad will happen to his friends. So he keeps hanging out with Sophia, and Shane beats him up for pretty much the whole movie. I mean, sweet kid, right? Ian's side story is that he's depressed. We find out he doesn't do much. He enjoys writing in his planner and going to the therapist and camping, but we aren't there yet. Just know that he gets talked over a lot, doesn't do much, and that makes him sad. Now, Clayton's dad's misadventures are what kind of segue the dance competition arc into the Sasquatch Jesus arc. He is a big Squatch fan, and his cassette collection is almost complete minus the second edition, which is super rare, leading him to always visit the local music store to find it. One day the music store does get the cassette, but frustratingly has already sold it to the opposing manager, Jeremy.
You're kidding me.
Jeremy then uses it as leverage to have his dad sabotage the team, which as we know didn't have to happen because Clayton doesn't show up anyways. But I guess they don't know that. Okay, so the main story picks up after Ian and Chet find Clayton. They decide to go find Drake Gordon, an ex-Sasquatch Jesus hunter, and have him lead the kids in their hunt. But wait, what a coincidence, so does the other dance team. Both of the teams spend 3 days in the woods camping, hunting, and bonding. Ian, who has had a lot of fun on the hunt, thanks everyone for just being there with him while they're all sitting around the fire. The 2 teams ignore him, as per usual, and they all go to bed. When they wake up the next day, they discover Ian has thrown himself off a cliff and killed himself. They appropriately give up the hunt and go home. Bit of a dark turn. Back at home, everyone grieves in a sad montage. Maybe a little less sad than it should be, but it's a comedy. I mean, come on. A few days pass, and Clayton's parents, realizing that he isn't home, find a note in his room telling them all to go to the town hall, where everyone else is as well, with similar notes all saying that he's captured Sasquatch Jesus. Instead of Sasquatch Jesus, however, it's just Clayton doing a dance in order to bring humans and Sasquatches together. And while people are upset there is no Sasquatch Jesus because Clayton just made the whole thing up, everyone does seem to be on board with the whole no racism thing. Chet stops talking to Sophia because he realizes he can just beat himself up. Ian, as we previously discussed, is dead, and Clayton makes up with the enemy team as they are impressed by his anti-racism dance. And Dad is just kind of left open-ended. I think it's safe to assume he never faces the consequences of selling his son's team out. The end. The movie was nowhere near as bad as I remembered it. It's surprisingly cohesive with a lot of world building. They have their own sports, TV shows, and music. Oh, and the score of the whole movie is all original, which impressed me, as well as all the art in the movie is original. All of the plots weave in and out of each other and lead into one another in a way that isn't horribly distracting, and the humor is very absurd and, in my opinion, fun. I don't think I have any real critiques, honestly. It would have been nice if it was a bit more focused, I guess, But going back and realizing what it is, I think it's very charming and fun. Something I didn't think about in either viewing of the movie is Joel Haver doesn't play any of the characters. He's just writer-director on this one. That doesn't subtract anything from the experience, I think, because it does a really good job for me, at least in bringing you into its story and experiencing it. If you enjoy cheaply made amateur movies, We Are Sasquatch is one I would honestly recommend. We'll put it here on the list for now. Let me know if you guys like that synopsis/review, because the IMDb page is looking for synopsises, and I'd be happy to contribute. Now let's move on to the second feature film. Okay. After being pleasantly surprised by We Are Sasquatch, we're moving on to Joel Haver's second feature film, 31 Days in Marshall, North Carolina. I have seen this one before as well, and I think I liked this one better originally upon first viewing. I think from what I remember, it was a little bit more focused. And reading the description, it's actually a little interesting. It says, in July 2017, Joel Haver and his friend went to Marshall, North Carolina, a town they'd never been to, where they knew no one. In their 31 days there, they made a movie with people they met. This is that movie. I didn't know that going in the first time, so they went to Marshall, North Carolina, and they just made a movie with the people they met in Marshall, North Carolina for like a month. That's pretty sick. I'm excited. I hope it does the same thing We Are Sasquatch does and just blow me away with how much better it was than I originally thought. So, let's go. Okay, I don't want to use the word charming over and over, but this movie is just as much so as We Are Sasquatch, though it is distinctly different. The movie's life started on Kickstarter under the name 31 Days Somewhere We've Never Been, with the mission statement of breaking down the myth of creative and not creative people. After being funded, their fifth update was that they've been successfully funded and that they decided on a city. In the eighth update in August 2017, they announced that the film would be completely shot and the city of question was revealed. The updates continue to show the progress of the film, as well as a screening that took place in Marshall, up until they actually released the film on YouTube. Synopsis time. 31 Days to Marshall, North Carolina follows Nick, our main character, a runaway guy in his father's car. The car breaks down just before getting to the city of Marshall, and he makes his way to the town pushing his car to the mechanics. After being told his car is going to be in the shop for at least 2 to 3 days, he wanders around the town and a local radio show host notices him and beckons him into the studio. After a short conversation about his situation, the DJ offers to let him stay for a while as long as he listens to what he's told and does what he's told. And also makes him aware that his car is probably not going to be done in 3 days, and gives him a more accurate 5 days. Turning in for the night, the DJ, who we now know as Mr. Wonderful, tells Nick where a key to the house is and asks he put it under the welcome mat before leaving. When waking up, Nick goes to check on the car, and when returning, Mr. Wonderful is on his deck. Nick forgot to leave the key under the mat, and Mr. Wonderful, I guess, doesn't have his own, and has been waiting for him frustrated. He kicks him out for not following his 2 rules, leaving Nick to wander the city the rest of the day, eventually passing out in an alley. When waking up, a local sculpture artist says that he can stay with him in his own trailer, and although there are almost no amenities, Nick accepts happily. He quickly realizes he has no food, however he goes to the gas station to get what he can afford. The clerk compliments his hat, and we don't see it for the rest of the movie. I can't remember how, but he ends up meeting a guy named Harry who shows him around and is revealed to be a bit of a supernatural eccentric. When going to Blenhasset Island, he reveals that he thinks the paintings open portals and that the arts building is built on an Indian burial ground, which unnerves Nick even though he finds it a little hard to believe. Returning to his trailer, he gets hijacked into helping a Papa John's delivery driver, which is a pretty fun tangent, and he gets to meet a lot more locals in awkward circumstances. He also makes $3 out of the deal. Nick returns to Harry on his promise to show him something weird and explains to him the reason he's still in town is due to his car troubles. Harry, trying to help Nick's situation, gives him some amulets, which Nick takes to the mechanics to cast a spell on his car, which works. Maybe. Either way, with his car now running, he waves goodbye to the sculptor and Harry, and drives off, only to realize he doesn't have his hat. Noticing the last time he had his hat was when he talked to the clerk, he runs back to confront him. The clerk, not acknowledging that he has the hat or knows anything about what Nick is talking about, frustrates him. He returns later in the night to break in and search the CCTV footage, and to see if the clerk stole it, and is promptly arrested and taken to jail.
Hats off to you, Albertson. In jail.
Jail is where he meets up with the delivery driver and another guy named Crouton. After bantering with them for a bit, Nick has a phone call with a shrouded female, who after seeing Nick on TV says she will help him find his hat, which Nick takes her up on after being released from jail and a few days of frustrating conversation with the delivery guy, named Dick by the way, and Crouton. The woman reveals she is a private investigator and will do digging into Clerk via the library system, which I thought was maybe funnier than it actually is. After some time passes, spending more time with the locals, Nick and the private investigator get back together and discover the correct Truman, the name of the clerk, and go to his house, where they are spotted by him. They drive away, and Nick makes the wise decision that maybe stalking this guy will land him back in jail. So he leaves the private investigator behind and spends more quality time with more locals. When returning to his trailer, there is a note left on the door from Truman asking him to meet at the local depot, which is a town hall for those of you who don't know. And when meeting, instead of Nick asking him politely about the hat, they have a pretty heated exchange, and that scares Truman off. Nick, seeming defeated, is invited by the sculptor to a very beautiful scenic overlook of the nature surrounding the town, and they have a bit of a heart-to-heart, which is then followed by another non-sequitur about hot Hollywood dogs? Yeah, you're gonna have to watch this one too. Cutting away, we see another older man entering Marshal the same way Nick did. This man is looking for someone fitting Nick's description, and he asks all of the characters we've met if they've seen him. After a short Joel Haver cameo, we are told this guy is Nick's dad, and when he shows up at Nick's trailer door, they embrace, and the two leave town together. Nick's character is pretty much a straight man. No, not sexually, theatrically, for the audience to insert themselves onto, so they can be introduced to the mass amount of side characters. And I think Joel made a really good choice by doing this. I think it would be tempting to turn the town into a character when making a story about a specific area, but instead he let the audience just see the people in the town, and the goofiness of the movie lets the people of Marshall shine through. The music in this movie is all performed by the residents of Marshall, and it's beautiful, and reasonably so, just fits. He made a comment saying that it was obvious that music was a huge part of the town's culture and really wanted to capture that in a movie. I'd say that he did a great job. It's worth watching just for the music. It's pretty clear that I think the movie is a love letter to this little city, and is a visual kind of representation of falling in love with the city and its residents. Really great movie. It's gonna have to beat out We Are Sasquatch in the ratings because it had a bit more of an intact story with less moving parts and made me miss North Carolina.
Funding for Jazz and his growing group of very real friends is provided by nobody. So please consider following me on this list of assorted social medias and viewers like you. Thank you.
Okay, took a little break. Got something to eat. Took my dog for a walk. Feeling a little refreshed. Well, I forgot to put up my lighting, so this shot's gonna look bad, but that's okay because we're taking a little time to feel sorry for myself. This one, it says I've seen a little bit, but I leave YouTube on while I sleep, so I think this just auto-played while I was asleep, so I have not seen, this is the first one I haven't seen at all. And the description here is Bud and Judith's relationship is coming to an end. Bud, a clueless moron, doesn't know how to feel about that. So that leads me to believe that this is going to be like a rom-com with a bit of a twist on the rom. I'm excited. I didn't look up the IMDb for this one just because I'm tired. I've watched 3 of these, but it's okay. I'm stoked. I'll take notes while we watch this one. It's an hour and 14 minutes long, and it has much more views than 31 Days in Marshall, North Carolina, which I think is weird because I think that one has less views than We Are Sasquatch and this one, even though I felt like it was pretty good. So yeah, I don't know. This one's in a pretty cinematic aspect ratio. This one's not in the super epic Snyder vision, but I don't know. I highly doubt he used an anamorphic lens, but we'll see. We'll see. Could be surprised. Okay, let's watch it. Okay, wow. Way more cinematic and way more technically impressive this time around. This is the first movie to star Joel, so I'm imagining he got a ragtag crew to shoot and light the movie. But I mean, wow. As far as production, I'm not sure I saw any growth. It was Handycam VHS camera to professional. He does say in a pinned comment that this was made in his final year at film school, so that might explain a bit of it. And also I lied. I have seen the first 20 minutes of this film before. This was my first complete viewing though. And that's how most of the rest of these reviews should be, with one more exception I believe. Bud and Judith are a couple in their early 20s, and like the description says, are in a failing relationship. The movie starts with the both of them in couples counseling, which everyone who interacts with the both of them thinks is strange because they're so young. Why not just break up? Plenty fish in the sea and all that. Well, Judith doesn't seem to have an issue with that idea, but Bud, however, is incredibly clingy. It's revealed that she is seeing a mutual friend of theirs, Lance, on the side, and when we see them all together, she is frequently sniping at Bud, but soon after the Lance reveal, she decides to finally leave Bud. He's crushed by this, and hangs around with his friends to cope, which they do not appreciate, because he's being a bit of a buzzkill, and he also has really bad diarrhea, making them uncomfortable. After each of his friends ask him to leave because he's just moping around them, he decides to go to his parents' house out of state. Looking at the IMDb page of the movie, very few people are actually like working actors, so I think it's worth mentioning maybe that the mission statement from the last movie wasn't that far off. The first scene where the long shot really grabbed me was the one with Buddy's father and his in-movie buddy. Friend. Connor, where he comes over to recount a suspected break-in by a high school friend, and he tries to recruit Bud into helping him retrieve the stolen drill. Bud responsibly denies the invitation, but we do get to see Connor and Spaz botched up. In the meantime, Bud sets up a date with a school crush of his, Laura, and they meet at the local restaurant. She expresses that the message he sent her was alarming, and that she doesn't want anything to do with him, and she has a boyfriend. Bud embarrassingly tries to keep her around for the date, but she leaves. Reeling from the embarrassment, I assume, he plays around with a basketball, comically dribbling, working up to the courage to take a shot. Once he goes for it, a car pulls up, almost hitting him. This causes him to slip and slide into the pole holding up the net and hurt himself. Just on a side note, what an incredibly apt metaphor for how awkward and esoteric he is with relationships. Harry, the person who almost hit Bud, drives him to the hospital where he frantically screams in the back of the car. When arriving, the doctor tells him that he has destroyed his balls and they will have to be removed. Also, the diarrhea he's had has been a symptom of a parasite, so he'll have to get that removed too. He's told to stay in bed for a few weeks after the operation. When returning from the hospital, he decides to call Laura to explain everything that's happened and try to get another date. She lets him know that this is out of the question, and he tries to fill her in on everything that has happened to him. And I think this is a point to note because with the change of location, he's starting to focus his obsessiveness onto someone else. I think it's fair to say that Bud doesn't necessarily need Judith or love Judith as much as he just doesn't want to be alone. He wants someone to be able to cling on to. After a series of events involving newly chopped testicles, stairs, and Playboy magazines, Bud returns to the hospital where the doctor tells him with no balls he will in fact have a hard time becoming erect and will likely have a lowered libido. He also gets recommended to a testicular cancer survivor meeting, as they don't have balls either. When introducing himself, he tries to explain how what is happening to him is kind of like what happened in Fight Club, and the group complains, leading to him being asked not to come back. Returning to his parents' house, Bud starts to imagine his own lamer, edgier Tyler Durden, where they poorly reenact the first fight scene in the movie, and his mom comes upstairs to check on him, revealing he punched himself in the ear. She asks him to stop taking the pain meds and go back to New York. And I feel you kind of have to feel sympathy for Bud by this point. Literally no one wants him around. But he does what his mom asks, and after 2 months he returns to his apartment in New York and hangs out with one of his friends who has since gotten a girlfriend. They fuck with him for a little bit before deciding to hook him up with one of their friends, Karen, and we cut to her showing up at his door. Karen is shown immediately to be quirky, and her and Bud hit it off immediately. She is strangely trusting of Bud, entering his apartment with no immediate plans to leave, despite them being on a blind date. I like the idea of Bud meeting someone as strange as he is, but I'm not sure I'm happy with how it was handled. Up to this point, Bud has been awkward in the worst ways possible. Clingy, way too open about personal details, and weaselly in the way he approaches women. But as soon as he starts talking to Karen, he's just a quirky, goofy dude? I don't know. Not the vibe I got from the whole movie. Maybe he was just acting that way because he was desperate to have someone around and no one would. And now that this person is around, he's fine. Either way, they have a great date, and he ends up going to a party so he can meet her there. And at the party, Bud and Karen are having a good time, having fun, bonding, until Judith and Lance show up. Bud makes a huge scene, upset when he finds out Judith and Lance have been together the whole time he's been gone. When he confronts them, Judith takes the wheel and they have a screaming match like they did at the counselors, but with much more confidence and frustration. We cut back to his apartment where he is alone on the little toy motorcycle he got earlier, and he is trying to call Karen, but she won't pick up. There is a pretty intricate motorcycle scene where he crashes and his Tyler Durden character asks him to go buy groceries. And when returning, the movie ends with him crying next to another man on the elevator. This movie, I think, while technically way better, has lost a little bit of the charm. There are moments in the movie that make me smile and laugh, and I think the pacing is really good. It feels slow-moving and methodical in an entertaining way that keeps me interested. I think it borders on what it wants to be, which is a story about an awkward, clingy guy trying to find someone and cope with who he is, and what it can feel like, which is a bit incel-y.
It's hopeless, man. That's how these chicks are. You know, they all have thousands of guys asking them out. Why, she probably had 2 other dates planned, and you were unlucky enough to be the fallback in case one of the hotter guys tried to drug her or something. You want some advice? Drink up. You've got a long night ahead of you.
Well, here we are again.
I enjoyed the movie though. I'm gonna say Joel is 3 for 3. It just barely beats out 31 Days to Marshall, North Carolina. That movie was just so full of charm, but I think Feeling Sorry is much more realized. He says it's the first film he fully scripted out, and with that being the case and all of the long shots, it really is technically impressive and beautiful to look at as well as being entertaining, still holding what I would consider his brand of humor and style. Let's move on before I regret that decision. Alright, I think we are going to end the night on I'm Going to Be Famous, the movie. The description says, originally released as a web series over the summer of 2018, I'm Going to Be Famous chronicles my year-long journey to become famous before graduating from college. This edit compiles and condenses the 5-hour series into a feature-length film. Let's see what the top comment was, pinned comment was, because I forgot that last time. To date, this is the grandest thing I've ever done. It was formerly released as a longer, drawn-out web series. This new edit condenses it down into something watchable in a single sitting. It was a doozy to put together. Please share. Oh, I will. I'm pretty excited for this one, actually. I think I love anthologies, so I'm really hoping this is an anthology. All my favorite things are anthologies. Off the Air, Robot Carnival. Does Mystery Science 3000 count as an anthology? No, that's like a running series. Either way, I'm excited. I'm hoping, to put it in Bo Burnham terms, I'm hoping this is more of an inside, less of a Zack Stone is going to be famous. It's got some copyrighted music in there. Hopefully I for sure won't play that. I have Creator Studio up instead of the fucking poster. Here's the poster. Poster looks good. You probably can't see it. Here it is. I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm definitely done. I'm done for the day after this one. That leaves 2 more? What? Do I not have the posters for the other ones? Pretend That You Love Me, Island, Forget About Everything. Yeah, I don't have the Forget About Everything. I'll have to get that poster. Okay. I kind of wish I didn't watch that. I don't mean that it's bad. This movie is a recut of a project he had on another channel of the same name. I feel like I maybe should have watched all of those videos as opposed to this movie, and I will recommend, if you want to watch this movie, 1, do it already. I'm literally spoiling these movies. What are you doing here? And 2, give the original channel a shot. I'm certainly going to after I get the Joel out of my system from this crusade. I think giving a synopsis of this is going to be very hard. It's not really disjointed, and it does follow a kind of structure, but just barely. I'd say this is for sure a mix between the 2 Bo Burnham options I gave earlier. It's very mockumentary style, where he is involving real people and plays off their suggestions in staged, hilarious ways. It's essentially us following him attempting to be famous over a 5-year period, during his college experience where he attempts many different avenues, hoping to land a few to be a prima donna. He's trying to be a lead actor in a feature film, a rap artist with an award-winning song, a stand-up comedian with an hour special, a performance artist, and he's trying to get buff. All of it is, of course, him being ruthlessly awkward and making us, as behind-the-scenes onlookers, painfully uncomfortable. So, in the rapper arc, he makes like 4 or 5 songs in a studio with a friend of his, and none of them take off like he wants them to. So he makes music videos, and those don't help either. So he gets a flash mob together. However, over the course of practicing, he bonds with them, and when they do a vote on which song they're going to dance to, he feels guilty for rigging the choice in his favor, so they do a Bruno Mars song instead, and the whole plan is ruined. Instead, he just makes his own award show, and it's so funny how awkward everyone is. He doesn't even win his own show, but he gets an award for coming in second place between the 2 contestants. They don't even perform during the show, they just stand on stage and glance over at the judges while their song plays behind them. Is the joke just how awkward it is, or is he taking shots at something? Is there an award show I'm not aware of where they just stand on stage and listen to their own song? Like some XXL award show that I'm not aware of? The actor one is the first we get introduced to, I think. His friend tells him to make a demo reel, so he does that with a bunch of actor cliches. He does a bunch of auditions, but none of them call back, and he even gets ghosted by one. There was a reference to him hiring a kid to make a home movie type deal to get like on like AFV or something, but I think that was left out and just in the conclusion. But it all culminates in him just making his own feature film, and it's fucking I'm Taking Time to Feel I'm Sorry for Myself, and starring in it. I swear that is just there to fuck with me specifically for even trying to do this. It's important to remember that Joel isn't trolling me. This movie was released a year before the other movie. The stand-up comedian one is painful, but ends on a pretty sweet note. He does a stand-up gig where his pants fall down, and it gets a big laugh, so he tries to recreate it to make it his comedic thing, but he spills muscle milk or something on it, and the pants shrink in the wash. So when he goes back, he can't make his pants fall down, which is the only joke he thought he'd for sure land. When venting at the bar, a guy tells him that that's what clowns do. No offense. So he takes that literally and goes up on stage with a bunch of clown tricks. And he fucking bombs. I mean, let's say for a minute, and I'm not saying this is true, but let's say everyone in this shot is an actor. That is still so far outside of my comfort zone, I squirm watching it. Got the best meme ever out of it though. This concludes with him doing a stand-up special for just his dad, with all the jokes he's been practicing, and his dad really enjoys it. There is a whole hour on the I'm Gonna Be Famous channel. For sure recommend you watch that, because it's just as sweet as can be. The performance artist arc is one I'm really split on. So he does a bunch of performance arty endurance stuff. He tries to eat 3 pounds of spaghetti. He picks his nose for 4 hours in an art exhibit. He tries to crab walk the 2 miles of Central Park. And he asks random strangers if they want to hang out all day. One of them takes him up on it, and they go back to his place, have a conversation, and do a puzzle. Which, thankfully, he allows this one to break the fourth wall and reveal that she was an actor. Because she was talking about going to school, and it had real peeping Tom recording without permission energy. But in the conclusion, he sneaks into the Guggenheim curator's office to ask if he can display his video somewhere. And I honestly don't know if this is fake or not. It does follow the formula of he talks to a real person, then does what they say, but it feels like a real conversation where the curator is very sternly and frustratedly asking him to leave his office, while he pleads to have his art seen. I think the smoking gun on this one is he takes an elevator up to the office for a few seconds, and when he leaves we can hear he takes the stairs, and it takes him like 12 steps before he's out the door of the building. But if Joel himself told me it was real, I honestly would believe him. But interspersed between the absolute absurd things Joel is getting up to, there are a few somber and emotional moments, like his dog dying, or a conversation with his mom about his ex-girlfriend, and him visiting his father in the hospital. Those moments I think do a lot to really sell you on the things that maybe would be a little less believable if we were just fed the stunts, because I think a lot of them are kind of ridiculous when viewed alone. I think I'm Going to Be Famous is about defining what you believe success is, taking the goalpost back, and it matches with what his core values are. You know, everyone can create art, everyone can be creative, they just have to. This is going to be the first one I put below others though, and it's going way down there. I'm putting this behind 31 Days. I really enjoyed it. I just have a feeling it's going to translate better when I see it as a series. It really just made me wish I had watched that instead of the movie.
Okay, so have you seen any of Joel's other movies?
Movies, no.
Okay, you've seen his shorts though?
Yeah.
Okay, how many shorts have you seen?
I've seen a lot.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of
Okay.
fun.
You a big fan of Joel? Would you consider yourself a pretty big fan of Joel Haver?
I would say I am a fan of Joel Haver, yes.
Okay. Do you, what do you think? So before you watch this movie, because we're going to be watching, not together, but we're both going to be watching this movie, and then deliberating about what we think about that movie at the end, while I synopsize it, or while we synopsize it. You can help do that too if you want. But what do you think, going in, what are your expectations?
Well, reading the comment, I'm not sure what to think now.
What did you originally think before reading the comment?
I was thinking it was just gonna be just, I don't know, because I haven't seen any of his movies, so I don't know how, like, deep they can get, but, like, I saw this as just by himself for 6 months. I'm like, yo.
Okay. So watching his movies, I've watched all of them up to this point, and my chair is squeaking. Is that annoying? They're kind of funny. They have his like trademark humor so far, except for the last like 2 movies ago. Well, no, they all kind of have his trademark humor that you would expect, I would say. Yeah. So watching his movies so far, they're pretty good, right? They tackle emotional subjects, but they do it with his brand of humor. He does a good job, I think. They're really well put together, and they juggle both. They juggle his humor as well as the topics he's trying to tackle. But now that you've read that comment, now what do you think?
I'm thinking it's gonna talk about isolation for sure.
Okay. How do you think it's going to be like production-wise? So you think the theme is going to be like isolation and stuff. What do you think This is released in 2019, by the way, so if he's talking isolation, it's pretty forward-thinking.
Say ahead of his time.
Yeah. By a few months anyways. It was released in December 2019.
One of the things I'm looking forward to is to see how, like, because I have a feeling he's just going to do something just amazing. He's just going to have really nice angles with the camera. Because I remember there was, like, what video was it? Hold on. Oh, God. I don't have to dig too far in. But it was the one where his buddy threw him off the cliff.
Yeah.
Where he's just kind of talking in his head the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling it's gonna be something.
Okay, so
similarities to that.
Production, you're thinking on scene, just over 6 months by himself. Kind of like Inside. You watch Bo Burnham's new special?
I haven't seen that one actually. No.
It's pretty good. I recommend it. But that's pretty much what it was. It's just him in his room making a bunch of skits over the course of a year. So that's kind of what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be like a anthology? Like a bunch of disconnected skits?
I feel like it's probably going to be more of like an anthology where it's just like a bunch of just like situations he's in where he has to be like, yeah, I got to deal with this on my own kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's no one to help him now.
Okay. I think that's pretty good. So, we're going to leave, watch the rest of the movie, and we'll be back in an hour and 8 minutes. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me, man.
All right. See you then. So we both just finished Island. Let's get your initial reaction.
Speechless, man.
You're
really.
speechless? Why is that? What about it?
Second half I was like, just the whole time I was like trying to find like something to connect, and I was like, what?
So during when it's like real life, you're like, what the fuck?
Like, yeah, once he's on land.
Okay. So the aspect ratio changes for when he goes to like 1x1, 4x3 or whatever to
I mean, I guess we'll get to it whenever we like talk about more like segments of it if we're gonna do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like stages. So I was like, talk more about it.
Which reminds me, I need to pull my notes up here. All right. So your initial reaction is just what the fuck? You don't know what the themes are.
Yeah.
You don't know it wasn't at all because you said you thought it was gonna be an anthology. I'm curious to know what you thought. Now that you know that it wasn't an anthology.
I mean, I was just expecting it to be like
a bunch of like his channel, like a bunch of skits.
Well, no, more of just like scenes of him like trying to adapt, and then him eventually getting it.
Adapt to what?
But just living on the island, finding a way out.
Okay. So before we start, I did want to say that I didn't give my expectations going into it. I forgot to do that. I thought it was just going to be him on the beach. Like the second half of the movie is what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like him on a beach, pretending that he's on an island, and yeah, like just pretending, like going through that thought process, right? Of just like, oh, I'm on an island. How do I survive? And I'm lonely. But it definitely wasn't that. So it totally I kind of, I think, had an advantage over you, though, because I've watched, on this project, I've watched everything else up to this point. So I knew it wasn't going to be a bunch of skits. But it still blew me away, I think. Okay. And this one, I want to say, was way more DIY than all the other ones.
I think
Like the beginning.
that's my second note. There's a lot more DIY than expected.
Yeah. Like, but I think there's a reason for that. I believe there's a reason for that. But we'll get to that, I think. I think halfway into the second half, it explains itself pretty well. Okay.
So we'll get to it when you talk about our reactions to it.
Yeah, so here's my synopsis so far. As Joel wakes up panicked on an island, right? He quickly realizes that he's stuck on the island, right? He's like panicking, and then he's like, and then we cut to him just being like, oh, not much I can do but live here.
Yeah, I thought it was just gonna be him like in front of the projector, like just see him just trying to get used to it all
Yeah.
and like
Okay.
live with it.
Yeah.
But
And then he struggles with the seagulls making noise, and he slowly copes over several days until he just finally decides, like, I have to eat, like I have to get a fish, right? I have to fish something. And then he gets a fish, and it starts talking to him. So what did you think? What did you think about the himbo bro fish?
I thought that was just him losing his mind for a minute.
Yeah, I did too.
I was like, because also I was like, he's starting to lose his mind and like struggle with like, oh, I can't kill something to eat it.
Yeah.
Whenever the seagull left and he was mimicking it.
Yeah, because he like missed it.
Yeah, I was like, he's just lonely.
I didn't even think about that until just now, until you just said that.
Really?
I thought he was just going crazy, but no, he probably missed the fish. It's like, oh shit. That's a good observation. Yeah, I thought the himbo fish was hilarious. Like that was probably my favorite part of the movie. Was the himbo fish. He's like, bro, you ever like look at the stars, dude? Looks like a human dog or something. I love that. That made me laugh. But yeah, I thought he was just like losing it, which I think he was. I think that is what was happening. But so yeah, and then after he gets frustrated with the stupid comments, he comes very close to killing it, but decides he can't. The fish is scared, so I don't know if that is what caused him to leave, but he leaves right after that, and gives him a chair.
And then immediately starts like crying over it.
Yeah, and then he just starts crying on the chair.
Something I noted, he was given help, but he was hesitant to use it.
That's good.
Like with the chair.
I
how
think
the fish gave him the chair.
Oh, the fish gave him the chair.
And he never sat in it.
He didn't sit in it. That was weird. I think like when he was touching the chair, like it was really sexual, I think, kind of, but I think he was also like just, I don't know if he believed it was real. Like he was just touching it like, this is a thing. It's like next to me.
Something else I noted about him, like just crying over the chair, is he constantly like, he just starts out okay and then just gets fed up with someone and then just pushes them away and then immediately regrets it.
Yeah, I think that's the first example of that in this movie, is where he like befriends the fish and then he gets really upset and then he pushes them away.
Same with like the seagull, how the seagull was yelling and then he yelled at it to shut up and then it left and he started like,
well, he yelled at it to shut up and then it went and then he went, shut up. It went,
but yeah, he pushed it away and then he got sad about it.
yeah. I was kind of thinking about that the whole movie. Like, why does no one just
Like, what
want to
was
be
the seagull at all?
Well, like, why does no one want to be around him at all? He has another movie, his student film, where that's kind of the same thing. Where like he's just no one wants to fucking be around him, but it's probably because he's pushing them away. That's a good observation. So he's crying over his chair, and then he gets a working printer scanner. That kind of like that shook me a little bit. Like as soon as that happened, I was just like, what?
That was one of the few things where I'm like, okay, and then it immediately like shoots my sense of like,
Yeah.
I think I understand kind of like the theme. You know, he's pushing people away, isolating himself in a way. Like, what does this mean?
I don't want to say it took me out of it, because it didn't. I think he did it intentionally, but it's just like, yeah, I think I've got it figured out, and then he's got a fucking printer.
Yeah.
So he scans his hand and face, and he cries, and then so he's crying. He's like happy. He's like laugh crying, right? He's like, oh, I printed my face. This is like the closest I'm gonna get to a human touch, I guess. And then immediately, there's like a phone on the tree. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of that. He's like he has the printer, which is helping him cope. I mean, we know why he gets the phone, but I think upon first viewing of the phone, I was just confused. And then a storm happens, and it destroys all of his pictures, right? And he's upset about that. He tries putting them back together, but he can't. And then when he tries to make new ones, either the printer is out of ink or the storm damaged it or something. It's not working.
I think it just looked more like it was running out of ink.
Yeah.
There's parts of it that are like white.
I don't think that's important. But then he tries to use the phone. So then he tried to use the phone to call support, Canon support, and he just has a breakdown on the phone. Like, he's trying to get through to a person. He finally gets through to a person, and he can't communicate at all how he feels or like what he wants to get done.
I feel like that adds a little bit more to like anytime he, like, there's a sense to get help, he just breaks down.
Yeah.
As soon as like, oh, this can be fixed, it just something happens and he just can't quite connect the dots.
Yeah. I thought it was good. It was very emotional though. It felt good.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was like appropriate, I guess, like for his character to like
Or
just
being
break
stuck
down
on an island.
Yeah, he's just like, he's stuck on an island. He's emotionally incapable of dealing with it. And he just cannot for the life of him cope. Okay, so after struggling with customer support and crying, he chops down his tree, builds a boat, and gets off the island. He braves a storm and cold, eventually washing up on an actual beach with our brand new 16:9 aspect ratio. So you said this is the part that just mind-fucked you. It mind-fucked me too. I didn't think this is where the film was going.
I see, especially when I looked at, let me see if I can see like around like 33 minutes in of like an hour and 8-minute movie.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait, this is supposed to be like the end.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, like what?
Yeah. Oh yeah, so you were thrown off by the fact that he was escaping the island
So soon, yeah.
Yeah.
Something
And
I wanted to know
what
was the changing of like the aspect ratio and like how like when the camera's like so close to him, it just seems like kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But then as soon as he's on the beach, all the camera angles are like 15, 20 feet away.
Yeah.
It just seems very open, like he is free.
That's an interesting thought, because I saw it as just maybe a technical thing where he was because like if he were to show you a wider angle shot, you'd see his apartment, right? It would kind of break the world building he was doing. But you're right, it was like claustrophobic in a way, where like we could feel. I think this is all leading up to something that's a good supporting argument for what I think the conclusion is. So thank you so much for that.
Something I wanted to note on that, just really quick.
Yeah.
The just sheer coincidence of like half the stuff that must have happened.
Well, I think
Like the lady,
go ahead.
like even like the lady in like the woods, talking about like the ferns. It's like,
oh.
I there seems like a weird disconnect between like what's like, you know, his buddy that he paid to like, hey man, help me with this real quick, or if it's just like which is real, which isn't.
You should watch. He has another channel called I'm Gonna Be Famous, which is what he condensed his last feature film into. It's like he had this channel called I'm Gonna Be Famous, and then he took all those videos and condensed it into a 2-hour movie. And I think you'd like that one, because that one really muddies the water with that kind of thing, where he's I think what he does is he'll just hang out in an area for like a really long time until something interesting happens, and then he will either get them in on it. So he's like, after that spontaneous thing happens, he'll be like, oh, by the way, I'm making a movie, do you want to be in it? Or it'll be totally scripted. It's really hard. He's really good at not
blurring the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So my note here was that it was like multiple empty conversations. Like all these he's like trying to bond with somebody and it's just not working out. And I thought the only one who really wasn't an exception up to this point was like the woman on the dock who was like trying to look at Cuba. Going with the theme of all of these being empty conversations, I don't think she was one. I think she was pleasant, but she was trying to get help from him, I guess. But I think that theory kind of breaks down going forward. So I think it shows that he's more and more getting comfortable going out and talking to people.
Yeah.
So he's sad walking through the park, like kind of sniffling and crying, and then he approaches those frisbee throwers. And this is one where I think they might not be actors, but they might be in on it.
I see. Yeah, I think it was like after a point, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like, they're definitely in on it at this point.
Yeah, because he ends up hanging out with them. I kind of wrote down that he still felt isolated because they were like speaking over top of him in like a Russian language, like when they go back to their place.
And he's just kind of sitting in the middle of them weirdly as they're like looking over top of him, basically.
Yeah, but then
like there.
Yeah, and then they go to like a dance thing. And he's like partying, and he's like, oh, I gotta take a break. And that's when he calls Cannon support again. I'm looking for this representative I had last time, and he's talking about the representative he had while he was on the island. And and they're like, we can't just give you that guy. It's like, oh, well then can you take a message and just say, I'm doing good now, I'm out having fun. Like, can you let him know that I'm not like sad anymore? And this is where I think he just plain black and white says what the movie's about. And that is loneliness. Like, I think the island, the DIY setting is like I think it was inspired by the phrase like on your own island or like on your own little planet or something. And I think the DIY island is him just being cooped up, like maybe working on something or just being scared, anxious to go out. And so the DIY island represents just his apartment or his world where he's not really interacting with anybody. And then he finally breaks down and he has to leave. Like, he's like, I gotta go out and talk to somebody. Which I think 4 months later would become incredibly relatable. This came out in December 2019, and the pandemic started March 2020. Yeah, is what I'm referring to. Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that adds up, or do you have another theory?
I think that adds up pretty well.
Yeah,
because even like the fish are just like the constant, like being in your room and like the constant just unproductivity. Because even the fish was like, there you go, man, another day down the drain.
Yep.
Just kind of like alluding to like, how long has he been there? How long has this been happening?
Yeah.
It's just nothing.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. But yeah, that was my mind fuck moment. That was my Fight Club Tyler Durden moment where I was just like, oh, that's what this is. Yeah. I thought that was good. I thought it was really impressive that he could put that feeling in a movie. Like in such a low budget movie, he could have that Tyler Durden moment. I thought that was insane. So he leaves his Russian friends and he walks around trying to strike up more conversation. So he's still pushing people away, like you said. Like, he's still like, okay, that was fun. Let me go find someone else. Maybe I can find someone else I connect with better, or something like that. But he goes around talking to more people, and then he ends up on the dock talking to that chick, who I originally thought was like a kid or something. But
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, Joel, what are you doing?
I know. Well, he does that. Oh man, so him and that girl like really bond. They explore the beach, and then they go back to his house. And
Was it his house or was it like a hotel room?
I think it was his apartment.
It's like, I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, it could be either. I just assumed that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then we get that peeping Tom scene.
Yeah.
I took a specific note because he does this a lot in his movies, where he'll have a peeping Tom scene that he ends up.
Really?
Yeah. Where usually he'll end up revealing, oh, that wasn't real. This time he didn't do that, but I think it was obvious. But these peeping Tom scenes always wig me out. Like, I hate them so much. Like, I like them because they make me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
Just don't want to feel uncomfortable.
yeah, they do a really good job of giving you that feeling, but oh, I hate it so much. I hate that feeling.
Same thing with like the McDonald's scene or like the first frisbee, like the scene with the frisbee guys
Yeah.
at first, where he's just like when he was singing to like the homeless guy at the McDonald's, and he's just like, yeah, I can't quite remember what that is, and he just keeps going.
I know. And he's like, and then he eventually gets it. It's like, oh yeah, it's Jimmy Buffett, yeah. And he's like,
He still keeps
wasting
going.
away again, and he's just like, Margaritaville, yeah, I know it. You can stop now. And he's just like, looking for. Yeah, it's.
I think my favorite line from that was like, he's from like around here, isn't he? And the guy goes, yeah, I think he's from around here. A lot of people are.
Yeah, he's just
moving
like,
on.
yeah, he's just like, yeah, I'm trying to get off this. Yeah, Joel Haver is really good at like focusing in on just that intentional cringe, like that awkwardness to the point of cringe. It's a strange experience to watch. You should watch his other movies. I think a lot of them tap into that, and it's incredible.
After this one, I'm definitely gonna look at a few more.
I hope so. After that, we watch them undress, prepare to sleep together, and at the end, she suggests that he should go to Disney World, and he does by himself. Weird, I think. Why would you do that? Like, he's feeling lonely, but why not just be like, oh yeah, I'll go. You want to come with me?
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't want to. I don't know. But
Could also be like that kind of like starting to kind of push someone away.
yeah, that could be it too, where
Just
he's
be like, yeah, I'll just go by myself.
So then he goes there and he calls another girl.
I didn't notice that was a different girl.
Yeah. Because he's like, I miss you so much. I dream about you every day.
Mm.
And then she starts getting emotional too. Like, oh, she's like, oh yeah. But before we can hear if they're going to get back together or anything, the audio starts cutting out. And that's the end.
I think the thing she says right before it cuts out is she's like, so how you doing? You okay? And then
Yeah.
it cuts out.
Yeah. So we
Like
don't even know.
at that specific question.
Yeah, we don't even know if he's doing okay. He'd be doing awful. I mean, he clearly is. He's at Disney World alone calling his
Doing
ex
great.
Yeah, and that was Island. That's the entirety of Island. What do you think the whole thing is about? Like, what do you think the whole project?
I feel like it is a lot of like, stuck in your own bubble, just kind of not doing anything for a while, and then finally stepping out,
Yeah.
and trying to take hold, do something, while also showing like his personal flaws of like pushing people away kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just kind of,
And how dangerous mentally that is, I guess. A lot of people can relate to that, I guess, because that's kind of like a new thing, I think, where well, not really a new thing anymore, but like a much more modern problem, I think, is having the ability to shut yourself in, and then when you want to go back out, you realize like my social skills have deteriorated so poorly that like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I get that sometimes. I sit here and make YouTube videos all day or work on something all day. I go to work all day and then I don't even want to go out. Like why? Why would I? I have everything I need here. And how?
work in retail, you talk to people all day, and then you're like, all right, well, what am I gonna do now? Go out, talk to people? No,
Yeah.
thanks.
Oh yeah. About how kind of dangerous it is to isolate yourself. How you'll go crazy, you'll miss being around people. And then when you go back out, you've kind of forgotten how to have relationships. You've kind of forgotten what they should mean. Is that it? You think that's a good concluding thought? Anything else
I
you
think
wanted
it's
to
pretty
add?
good. I just wanted to add just a few, like, the intro scene was really beautiful while also being, like, tense.
Yeah.
It's like the water being projected onto, like, the concrete, like, brick.
Mhm.
And I think the way he used sound and the lack of sound was really good at doing, like, tension. Like anytime a storm would happen would be when something tense was happening, or just the feeling of loneliness. It would just be dead silent, maybe like some waves.
I think that sound comment is a good place to shout out or plug your channel here, where you talk about
No,
music mostly.
I've only done 2 music things because it's the first 2 things that came to my head.
Oh, okay. So you're not going to focus on music entirely, you don't think?
Not entirely. I'm just wanting to kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the wall right now.
Well, if you're interested in music and or gameplay and maybe some Joel Haver movie reviews, go check out Jacobian's YouTube channel. Thank you so much, by the way, for helping me with that.
Hey, no problem, man.
I forgot to tell Jacobian we were ranking these. This one I think goes to the top of the list. Very artistic, had that Fight Club mindfuck moment. Good idea, great execution, I think. Truly, Joel has outdone himself for now.
Two bros chilling in the hot tub, 5 feet apart 'cause they're not gay.
Okay, so forget about everything for a while. This one is, again, our shortest so far. And it says 2 strangers wind up house sitting for a family that's away. He also says that he made this while in quarantine, and he filmed it in 6 days with his friend, and finished the whole thing in 2 weeks. So I don't know, is it fair to expect the same kind of quality as what was that last one, The Island? Totally not sure what to think. I don't think this one deals with awkward themes and isolation quite as much as a lot of his other films, but that's kind of his bread and butter, really, is talking about the pain of just being a goofy dude, not quite being understood as a creative, or just not quite being understood as a person. I'm excited. I'm getting a little burned out on these movies, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I'm excited. Shot in 6 days, 2 weeks. We know Joel Haver can make a good movie, so I'm excited to see what he does with the time crunch. That was pleasantly surprising. I honestly did not believe that Joel would be able to keep the quality level he's set so far, especially in the time limit he had, but he did it. It's honestly hard to believe this film was made in 2 weeks. I think it is believable that they improvised it over the course of shooting, because it is a bit more unfocused than Island, really lacking any kind of theme or message, but still enjoyable enough, I think, for a sit-down movie watching experience. So for the synopsis, the 2 characters aren't named, so I'm just going to call them Joel and Mason. I just found that writing drunk guy over and over while taking notes got irritating, and would probably be irritating to listen to as well. First shot. Joel is awoken by someone at his window shouting Amber repeatedly. He opens the window to try to explain to Mason, who is very drunk, that Amber isn't there and he is simply house sitting and the family has gone to Seattle. Mason doesn't accept this, so Joel invites him in, and they end up having a pretty fun night together by the pool. The pair hilariously wake up the next morning, and they spend some more time together, quickly realizing the chemistry they have when Mason is drunk is not the same chemistry they have when he is sober, having a pretty awkward day. After Joel explains that the family won't be back for 2 weeks, Mason leaves and Joel enjoys the rest of his day on his own before going back to bed, where he is again woken up by Mason shouting for Amber outside of his window. They have another fun night, rinse and repeat. The next morning, Mason reveals he and Amber's relationship wasn't just a series of hookups like he had referenced the night before, and they spend the rest of the day chipping away at creating a friendship. Joel, realizing that Mason probably isn't leaving, says if he does stay, then he will have to let the family know. Mason interjects, saying the family loves him and he'll make the call instead, which he pretends to make. They again spend the night hanging out, and while Mason is drinking, Joel makes a snide remark that Mason is way funnier when drunk. Waking up the next day, Mason is visibly still hurt from the comment, but Joel doesn't try to push him or instigate why. He then asks Mason to help with the chores if he's going to stick around, and Mason proceeds to not do that. Later in the day, the two have another not quite intimate, but exploratory conversation about what each other is trying to forget by leaving their life behind and staying at the house for the time. As Mason continues to drink, however, he is more open about confronting Joel, and it turns into a screaming match, leading to Mason slamming a door that is known to jam, separating the two into two halves of the house. Joel threatens to call the cops as he knows that Mason didn't actually call the family and he's not allowed to be there. And Mason retaliates by saying he'll tell the family that Joel has stolen from them before, something Joel foolishly confided in Mason earlier. The two, at a stalemate, go to bed. Joel wakes up to try and sneak into Mason's half of the house via a patio, which ends with him being locked out with no way down, as his ladder has fallen over. Joel passes out on the patio and wakes up with a glass of water and his ladder replaced, allowing him to escape. But the petty squabble continues, with neither allowing entrance to the other. They do, however, perform nice gestures to one another, like making the other lunch or doing the other's laundry, essentially doing what is not possible from the other side of the house. That is until a few days later, when Mason leaves a note on the door asking Joel to call him later that night. The call ends with the pair making up and opening the house up to one another, and they come together to have a good cry, sharing this intimate moment. The film ends in a similar way it began, but Mason is not at the window shouting, just the clothes Mason had to borrow, assumably to never be seen by the other again. I really appreciate how these two characters are both kind of cut from the same cloth of sensitive and emotional. Joel trying to run away from the emotions of his current life, and Mason trying to cling on to a relationship that is at its end. Like I said earlier, I think it's beyond impressive that this was done in 2 weeks, and I'm even more impressed by how well the film works. It's an intimately close story of how two people became really close friends and bond over their own personal issues and struggles, and it's presented in a really goofy and fun way. This kind of slice of life of an awkward, or pair of awkward guys in this case, is something that Joel absolutely excels at. I'm putting this one above Taking a Little Time, but below Island. Island was just too well thought out, I think, to get beaten by this film. On to film number 7!
I better make mistakes, though I still make a lot of mistakes, but I internalize the problems 5 times over.
Last film for day 2, and it is Pretend That You Love Me, a film about dating, love, art, and pain. In the top comment, he says he's been working on the film for about a year now and is excited to share it. It's deeply personal, and he hopes it can offer people the same catharsis it offered him. This is the other movie I said that I had seen before, and that's the truth. I did watch this one before, and it's brutal. I remember this one being incredibly emotional, much more so than everything else I've seen so far. Even the most somber moments in I'm Going to Be Famous. I think I specifically remember it making me cry, which is, of course, exciting. I think this one has the most views of any of the other feature films on his channel, which is a bit tragic to me. I think this is the one he put out sometime soon after he really got his his big break after he was discovered on YouTube, really, by the community. And I don't know. I think all the other movies deserve just as much as attention as this one, although I do remember this one being really good. I remember the plot is something like he's making a movie, and he's doing that because he's frustrated with his father's health, and then his father tragically passes away in the movie, and I think in real life, which is what really chokes you up while watching it. And but we'll see. It was a good little while ago that I watched this movie, so I am excited to see if there's anything I forgot, if there's any nuances I don't remember. So let's do that, and I'll report back to you with my findings and a synopsis like we have been doing so far.
Disappear with no one saving me. Then I'm back. Your Georgia goes itching, fighting, not responding. I'm in hiding, fighting off myself.
This movie is the cream of the crop so far as to what he's made. I haven't seen his newest feature yet, but let's just rank this one now. It's at the top. It certainly deserves to be the most viewed, though I think it's still criminally underrated. The movie starts with Joel having several first dates at his house. Important note, Joel plays himself, so I'm not calling him Joel just because he's not named. Each of these dates starts with like an introduction conversation, then they move to listening to records one way or another, then they sit down and have a more intimate conversation. It's very much like a slowed down montage. The whole movie really is montagey, but it flows really well. Interspersed into the dating sequences, there are shots of him going to the hospital, which I think is our first hint that there is a disconnect somewhere. We aren't shown where quite yet, but the juxtaposition of the two settings doesn't feel like they're taking place in the same timeline. He then calls each woman from his house, which is important because none of the women realize it's him when he first calls, and he goes on second dates with most, to local parks, thrift shops, and movies, and gives each of them a kiss goodbye, further pushing along the narrative that he is becoming more intimate with each. Cut back to the doctors, and he is told that he has a benign tumor in his spine, again feeling a bit too real. The doctor's face is blurred out, so we know that this wasn't scripted or a part of the narrative. It kind of feels like we are looking at what is going on in his life while he is making a movie. He then begins asking the woman he is going on continuous dates with if they feel like what they are doing is romantic or if it's going anywhere, and he ends up opening up to the Spanish woman about his dad having cancer. He also starts sleeping with a few of the women, and we get more of a montage of him in those relationships. Joel is then told at the doctor's that he doesn't have a tumor, it's just inflammation, and he should take some pain medication and it should heal down over time. Cutting back, one of his dates says she is frustrated that both of them are happy and having a good time together, yet they still aren't in a relationship of any sort of official capacity. That conversation ends with a song sequence involving the rest of the women he's been seeing.
I need you, maybe, but probably not.
He thanks the crew and actresses, and this signals to us, the audience, that at least the dating parts of the movie are for a movie in the universe Joel is creating. Vlog Joel is making a movie, but in his real life is dealing with his dad's sickness and his own back pain. While editing the footage for the movie, he starts to hyper-focus on the kissing scenes, and is likely just remembering how he wasn't worried about his issues during those moments. And this is where the taking care of his dad arc begins. If you watch this movie and don't have a constitution of pure iron, I highly recommend a box of Kleenex or something, because what comes next is fucking brutal. Joel takes his dad to the doctors and sits around in waiting rooms and doctors' offices with him, eventually putting him to bed. And then we hard cut to his funeral and wake. If you followed Joel's channel or dove into it, you know his dad had a pretty special part in it. And these scenes are no joke either. This is the real deal. These moments of extreme importance to Joel being included in these movies really reveal his authenticity. Like, he really does pour his all into these, and the rawness of parts like these are what really sell that. Or at least inform you that's what he's doing. The emotional weight is very raw and unfiltered, and I feel it's really tough not to get teary-eyed during scenes like that. And yeah, I cried. I cried again. Just a little bit this time though. Returning to New York to work on his film, he asks the Spanish actress back to his apartment. He attempts to feel out if she has any feelings for him, but she is quick to say that she has a boyfriend and she is sorry if she led him on. She was just doing what she needed to for the movie. Joel knows this as he is just trying to use the woman as someone to lean on. And I think it's important to note that with these two big life events happening at once, which they likely did in real life, and pumping out content like he does, despite how gross it is to use people to just have someone, it's clear that this character Joel doesn't have anyone to talk to about any of this. He's trying to keep up that toxic masculine side of himself that's just to bury all of his emotions to the bottom, despite him very clearly having them and wishing that the fiction he had made for himself was true. After that awkward conversation though, she quickly and happily takes off and Joel calls another actress over to do more shooting. When she comes over, he tries to just make up a new scene and continue where their characters left off, but he is having trouble keeping his emotions down. It's starting to sink in that avoiding these issues with fiction isn't going to cut it. He eventually breaks down and the actress consoles him, and they kiss, with the movie ending on a similar screenshot to the ones he was reminiscing over earlier. I really enjoyed the ending, as I think it implied that he was using this movie to cope with the very real problems of his life, and the way Vlog Joel tried to use his movie to no avail. Again, Joel is very, very good at these slice of life movies of awkward guys, but this movie was so much more than that. It was representing some of the worst of himself in a very honest and heartbreaking way.
Okay, so I'm here with my buddy Nick, who has a YouTube channel. He does a lot of animations. If you follow my channel at all, you've probably seen a few. So you have a simple smash and bash job gone wrong. The last of the Joel Haver movies that I have to review.
Interesting.
Do you have this up on your computer? So, in the description, it says, after losing his job and wife again, Josh Swain is one down and out dude. Maybe the case of who busted up the local fast food joint's bathroom can give him the redemption he needs, or maybe it'll be his last. And it also says that it was shot entirely during the 2021 Oscars with no plan whatsoever.
Classic Joel Haver.
Classic Joel Haver. So I kind of just want to get your opinion, I guess, because I've been doing a lot of talking. What do you think, reading that, hearing that, what do you think this movie is going to be about?
I think it's going to be about a guy who lost his job and his wife again. And then he's trying to find probably this person who did a bash job.
Okay. You're thinking pretty straightforward plot, no surprises. You think it's going to be a comedy? You think it's going to be a drama?
I definitely think it's going to be a comedy, since it has bash job gone wrong in the title. And also it says losing his wife again.
Very.
And it says down and out dude. That's not in dramas, buddy. I've never seen that in drama descriptions.
Okay, I'm just asking because I've been watching all these movies, and so far, they've all been dramas.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Really?
Oh yeah, Joel Haver's movies. They're like, I mean, some of them are funny. They're funny, right? They have his. And just to reiterate, you're a pretty big Joel Haver fan, right? Like you stay up to date with his uploads and whatnot.
Yeah. You introduced me to him.
Well, thank
Scooby-Doo,
you.
You send me the scoop. I didn't compliment you.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I forgot about that. I thought you introduced me to him.
No.
So he made it during a live stream. It's like a 3.5 hour live stream. So I don't think I've said this probably every single time he's given himself a time limit. I say like, okay, this is a pretty short time limit. I don't think he's going to be able to make something of great quality inside that time frame, but every time he does. So I'm excited to know what they could have possibly recorded in 3.5 hours.
I'm excited. It's only 40 minutes long. It's like 20 minutes less than normally.
Okay, so just for me, I feel like that was a pretty fun end to my project that I've got going on. All the movies up to this point have been very kind of artsy. Like the first few weren't so artsy; they were just, you know, first foray into movie making. Then it kind of got into a lot of artsy stuff where Joel was conveying a message and in a theatrical way, right? Very good. I enjoyed them, but this one really was just like I feel like this is a very fitting like post-credit scene to kind of just end of the project on. I enjoyed it. So now that I've done that, what did you think of the movie, just as an overall whole?
Oh, dude, it's it was great. Just that sketch comedy. I don't know what you call that, but I guess it was super drastically different than what you watched, I guess. But
I the off the cuff, they're so good at that, just rolling with the punches, improv. That they were. I'm so surprised. Well, I don't know. It looks like it was made in 3.5 hours, right?
It seems like to me what they did. You probably know this more. Is that they live streamed it, and then they got in like random people who were watching the live stream and then improv off that. That's what it looked like to me.
It's so good. I loved it. Yeah, I think that is. I'll have to watch the live stream. There is a 3.5 hour live stream that I would love to watch. I don't know. I feel like I saw maybe a few recognizable faces.
Yeah, there might be a few.
Yeah.
Few friends, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like some were just random people.
Okay, so let's go through the synopsis and we'll talk about each thing. This one's a little bit harder to do because it feels like the plot is so up for interpretation by the actors at every scene that there really isn't a through line that we can.
The person who concluded it at the end really sucked at concluding it. He did not. Was not it at all. I don't know.
Yeah, it was just like, well, I feel like it's a lot to keep up with. I don't know if they filmed it in sequence, but yeah,
it's true.
I don't know. I don't think he did a bad job. He just had to. They just put him on the spot. Some random guy there, just like, okay, you have to come up with the ending now, and he was just like, All right, so the movie starts with them, Josh, played by Joel, interrogating someone over a McDonald's bathroom that has been destroyed,
and not like poop, not like diarrhea. Yeah. It's just like someone who used a baseball bat destroyed it like they were playing baseball.
Yeah. And I have a note here that says it was very improv-y, and he gets fired over beating the interrogation victims. What did you think about the laptop thing? Because obviously they couldn't have people there if people are phoning in from the. I thought it was hilarious though. Like it's such a novel
I think it's
idea.
Funny. It's definitely like a unique thing. But I think it's also because of COVID. This wasn't during the COVID times.
No, this was released like 2 months ago. I think they can get together now.
I guess it was in May. I think just to make it faster, they just had random people come in.
Just to get it done during the Oscars, because this is another one of his. He does this, I think, every year during the Oscars. Is he kind of protests it? I'm not familiar with all of them, but the first time was mentioned in another one of his movies where he just took a bath during the whole Oscars. But yeah, I don't know. I love it. This is the best one of those for sure, of his Oscar protests.
Just the story, it basically reminds me of every like cop movie. Yeah.
It was a pretty good buddy cop or good like detective movie parody of like a lone detective trying to figure. Yeah, he's like trying to figure his life out and the biggest crime of his career out at the same time. I think it was a pretty good parody of that.
The guy who committed crime isn't as bad as he seems.
Yeah. So then he pressures his wife to be his baby. Yeah, you want to be my baby? And she's like, no.
She's like, I gave you a chance. I cheated on you with your boss.
And then that's when we get introduced to the actual bathroom destroyer, who I don't think is named in the movie, but we all know the actor. He's a reoccurring friend on the channel and in his movies. He's in a few of his movies. And we find out that he's struggling with his own issues. He hasn't been paid for the job that he did, and he wants to.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even realize he wasn't paid until...
Yeah, he just realized.
And you gotta remember the random people he bumped into. The girl worked at the McDonald's.
So then the cop goes on a few dates. He goes on a date to try and vent his issues, and he also vents to like a restaurant worker. And both of those don't work out for hilarious reasons. I think the date doesn't work out because... Why doesn't the date work out? I forget.
Date doesn't work out because he asked the guy, "Hey, are you getting paid to be genuinely nice to me?"
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Oh, well, that's not my thing. I like people do that." It's like, "Sorry, bud, you had your chance. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Should have got paid doing this."
Yeah. And then him venting to the restaurant worker doesn't work out because he makes a fart analogy comparing his life to being farted on, and the guy misconstrues that as he's actually getting farted on, and frustratingly Joel just decides to leave that situation.
Yeah, that part was a bit confusing because I didn't know if it was a restaurant worker, because then he said he was like a barber or something.
There's restaurant noises in the background, so maybe he went up to another table and he's just like, "Here are my problems," and he's like, "I don't know how to solve that. I'm a barber, dude. Sounds like you got farted on."
That's a problem, dude. How bad is this thing? Oh,
you gotta fix your diet. If that's a problem.
I hate it when that happens.
Then that moves on to the bathroom destroyer isn't allowed to see the boss because a bouncer is stopping him, and after the mafia guy, after the destroyer explains to the destroyer explains to the bouncer that he wasn't paid, she empathizes with him and says, "Oh shit, you should start a union. Like, that's not good. You should always get paid for your work." And he's like, "That's a good idea." So he goes to the bank to try and start a union. And the bank guy is like, "I don't know how to start a union. Like, I work at the bank."
Then the bank guy wants to start his own union for getting water out of someone's ear.
Yeah. So then they leave that conversation on the promise that they'll start each other's unions, which just kind of seems silly because now it's like his problem isn't resolved. He still has to start a union. It's just a different union now.
And neither of them know how to start a union. It's the infinite cycle of just you can't really do anything.
Okay, so before the bathroom destroyer isn't allowed into the bosses, the cop goes home and he shoots a guy at his apartment. They end up having a nice conversation, but he shoots him to move the plot forward. Josh the detective is woken up by a knock at his door, and it's another neighbor who's like, "Why the hell is there a dead body outside of your apartment?" And they have a conversation about that. They both realize that their days kind of sucked, and they decide just to let, I guess, natural causes get rid of the body. Natural.
They do the high school thing.
Yeah.
Every time where you just let someone else deal with it. Yeah, someone else will.
Well, how does a body usually get removed? Oh, I don't know.
Probably had to call the cops, but I mean, like, that's a lot of work.
They both just had these awful days, and they're like, "You know what? This is too much. This is too much."
Yeah, let the other neighbor deal with it. Oh wait, no, the other neighbor. That's the dead body.
The cop ends up going back to the police academy, or the police station, to try and get his job back, in which he immediately opens up with trying to bribe the person at the front desk to get his job back. He quickly realizes this was a mistake and just says, "Well, how do I just earn my job back?" And she says, "Well, you're gonna have to do all the training over again and reapply." So he goes to his twin, who is the person who did the training for him originally. So that's how he started at the police station, was his twin did all of his training. And his twin says, "No, I don't want to do that." So he doesn't really know quite what. I don't know how. I forgot how that ends.
I mean, he doesn't want to do it because of the trampoline incident 3 years ago.
Yeah. His twin doesn't want to do the training because Hartley doesn't want to do it because of the popcorn game incident.
Yeah, I mean, I'm questioning, like, this was 3 years ago. How old were they? Like, because
they seem pretty old. Early 20s, I assume. He's doing pretty good in his early 20s to be a detective. So after this, the mafia guy, the destroyer, goes to another detective to try and get advice on starting the union. And the other detective just says, "Well, you should just beat up your boss if you didn't get paid. Like, why are you starting a union?" And the destroyer's like, "Well, are you sure that's okay to break the law twice? What was the first law you broke?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm just kidding." He's like, "Oh, well, if you haven't broken a law before, yeah, just go beat the shit out of your boss."
Yeah, just hypothetical.
Just a hypothetical, why not? That's where he goes. He goes off screen, then we cut to Joel having a conversation with his conscience, where his conscience kind of admits to not really paying attention, and he doesn't realize that Joel's killed somebody. So when Joel fills him in, he says, "Oh, that's sick. I've always wanted to do that." He says, Joel says, "Well, I kind of want to do it again. I want to kill that guy who blew up that McDonald's." Because now it's turned into the bathroom hasn't just been destroyed at the McDonald's.
Yeah.
The whole place has exploded.
It's real tense later.
Oh yeah, this part really culminates at the end. We go back to the destroyer, and he's trying to get into the mafia boss's room. And after explaining to the guy at the front door that he wasn't paid, the guy's just like, "Oh yeah, shit, come on in and tell him I want a raise." And he's like, "Well, that was easy." And he goes in, and the destroyer fights his boss, grabs money out of the stack that the mafia boss is sitting on, and leaves. In which he is again confronted by another cop who says, "You just came out of the mafia boss's room with a ton of money. Like, what did you do wrong?" And they have an amicable conversation and both go their own way.
Yeah, well, I find it funny because so the mafia boss was sitting on the money, but they fought before that. So that means so were they fighting while he was sitting on the money, or like when they fought, and then after they fought, he just sat back down on the money?
Yeah, he only gets off of his throne of money to fist fight people who want their fair share of it.
And then the the cop was something that he went to. Didn't he like bribe him to go away as well, like $200?
Yeah. The mafia guy bribed. Just said, "Hey, here's $200. Please leave me alone." He's like, "Okay, we can do that." And right after that, Josh talks to his old partner, whose audio cuts out on Discord. And
wait. No. What about the guy with the leather jacket? Where he gets stabbed?
Oh yeah. Joel goes to just, I guess, to interview criminal-looking people. So he
goes up.
Yes, he just goes up to a guy with a leather jacket, and he's like, "Hey, are you a criminal? I'm trying to find some information on a crime that happened." The guy's got a knife, and he's like, "Oh, the ex-cop wants me to talk about killing people. I've never killed anybody." That scene ends, right? We don't get any explanation there, right?
No. He said he reveals that someone could have died in the
Oh
McDonald's.
yeah, he reveals that someone could have died at that McDonald's, and Joel's like, "What? Someone died?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. You said that." And then we hard cut. We get another shot of the cop who's just recently been stabbed, and he talks to his ex-partner, who turns out to be the king of police. And while they're talking, their audio cuts out, and Josh, the detective, takes that opportunity to hire himself back, just to interpret the silence however he feels is appropriate, and hires himself back and gives himself permission to kill the McDonald's explosion guy with absolute impunity.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I'm up to date here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he never gets the stab checked out. He's just always stabbed, just bleeding out.
He's just walking around bleeding out from a stab wound. The mafia guy talks to his conscience too, and the mafia guy's conscience is a little bit more rational than Josh's. And she's like, "Well, don't kill anybody, but you should probably go figure out what happened with that McDonald's explosion if somebody died." And so this is where the detective and the destroyer meet at the police station, where the destroyer is trying to turn himself in because he feels guilty because someone might have died. I'm not sure where he finds out that someone died.
I'm not sure. I think they just kind of mentioned, like, someone could have died. I think he's just felt really guilty.
They meet up and there's a confrontation because he's like, "Hey, I blew up McDonald's. I kind of feel guilty. I'm turning myself in." The detective is like, immediately points a gun at him. He's like, "Oh, you did that?" He's like, "You're gonna die." And he's like, "Well, I'm turning myself in. I don't want to die." And after a long conversation and an accidental shooting again, they decide to make up and are visited by the ghost of the McDonald's explosion victim, who says, "Well, I didn't die in the explosion. I was actually shot beforehand, and that's how I died." And it turns out that Josh, the detective, has been a loose cannon all day and shot the McDonald's guy. So it was really all Joel's fault. Everything that happened was the detective's fault.
Such a big plot twist.
Such a big plot twist.
Who would have seen that coming?
I didn't see that coming at all. So now that we've gone through all that, what's your comprehensive opinion on the movie?
I think it was great. With it was only 3 hours they had, and with those random people,
Yeah,
It's pretty good, dude.
I think they did a pretty good job. It's the through line is not there. There is no theme or moral.
Yeah.
The acting is awful, and but it's so funny. It's so worth it. It's so funny. The whole time, the whole movie, they're breaking character and laughing at each other for the situations that they're bringing up to try and move the plot forward. It's it's so funny. It's very conducive to his skits. Like it's it's very much just a long version of those skits. I love it. I think if you want to watch all of the Joel Haver movies in rapid succession, this is a pretty fun one to end on. I know you've been through, you've definitely been through the same pain of watching 13 hours of movies.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I like watched half of one. Let me just see which one that was.
Which one did you watch?
It was I'm Going to Be Famous. I watched like half of that.
Did you like that one? I thought that one was pretty good.
I think it was going really well. Yeah, I liked it. I should have watched the rest of it.
Oh, you were you watched that for this video?
I watched it like a week ago. It's like when you first told me about the feature film. I decided to watch it. I didn't have anything else going on.
How far did you get into that one?
About 42 minutes. I believe.
Oh, okay.
That's what it says here. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna stop.
Okay, after a few days of taking a break, I'm ready to work things out with Joel and continue commenting on these movies. I'll be honest, I didn't completely ghost the guy. I did dive a bit deeper into his lore. When checking out his Patreon, I was introduced to a few of his other channels, Making Video Essays, which is a small collection of very competent and fun short video essays about video games, and What's Going On with Avery and Joel, which is an improv-y, awkward style talk show between friends with no chemistry, that eventually led into the I'm Going to Be Famous channel, which we've already spoken about. As well as Oh Brother, a channel he did as a child with his child friends. All of which didn't get much attention at all, but I think if stumbled upon by a random passerby, would still entertain. And that's because Joel's passion shines through just about everything he does. And this clearly remains true in his feature films. Joel's goal, I feel, has always been to create, and to inspire others to create. He does a fantastic job in the former, having a consistent track record of putting out quality videos that are guaranteed to entertain or interest a viewer, which led to him being discovered by the YouTube audience at large, and his subsequent explosion. And the latter he succeeds exceptionally in as well, while he references his mission statement of everyone can make movies in several of his videos where he addresses the audience directly. I think to most aspiring filmmakers, the DIY nature of his library is apparent and serves in and of itself to be teachable moments, as well as showing the moving parts of putting together scenes. I would say I hope Joel continues the path he is currently on, but I don't have to, because it doesn't seem like he's going to stop anytime soon, and from the look of his channel, he's just getting started. So I hope he's proud of what he has created and what he has achieved. It's an inspiration to all filmmakers and small YouTubers who happen across them, and for everyone else, it's a lot of fun to watch. Oh, and here are the final rankings for the movies. Each one I think is a great watch tackling complex emotions and the individual condition, though you could probably skip I'm Gonna Be Famous if you want a more traditional movie watching experience. I highly recommend Pretend That You Love Me, Island, and 31 Days to Marshall, North Carolina, in that order, if you only want to watch a few.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.